Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Aware Athlete Show. And today's guest is Deanna Kay. And Deanna is a longtime student and teacher of yoga, and she's an intense practitioner of yoga also. So, uh, Deanna, good. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And could we go into a little bit of background first? I Okay,
Yeah.
so I saw that you have been interested in healing and in yoga since you were a child. I'd like to hear a little bit about that. How did that just occurred naturally, or do you have a little story there?
I feel like it was very, very natural. I often find, or my perception of reality is that the thing that you might say like our dharma or our life purpose, it seemingly is that thing or that path that has just kind of come to us almost like very naturally in this life. So meaning you might have certain experiences that you might categorize as good or bad and or unfortunate, but somehow they lead us to this place of kind of walking down this road of like self-inquiry or ways to just know ourselves on a deeper level. And I think that there's like, when you listen to that and you go into that experience of kind of where you're being guided, you start to realize that, oh, this quote unquote tough experience I'm having for a very significant reason. And then potentially or hopefully you come out on the other end of that in a totally enlightened or transformative way so that you can now share these insights or this path with another and sort of just like help other people along the way. And so I feel like for my particular, like where I am now is very much, that was very much the path unfolding itself. So it was very like, okay, I went through this really intense experience and it led me to here. And all the while, yoga was part of my journey. And without yoga, honestly, this might sound dramatic, but I probably would be dead potentially, or in a very, very different place than I am now. And yeah, so that's kind of very general. So feel free to ask me like more specific questions and I can kind of go into.
Sure. I think that I can certainly agree or resonate with that. That some a lot of times when we're going through something, we don't understand all about it, but when we look back, uh, it certainly does have its lessons, and it all falls into place. That's the way I feel about it. So
Yeah. And it seemed like in these type of experiences where it kind of feels like we're trying to like navigate in the dark, there's a lot of trust involved that,
mm,
okay, this is leading me somewhere purposeful. This is leading me somewhere into the light, into a totally different place than I am now. And with that trust, I think the biggest component to be able to soften and lean into the trust is regulating your nervous system, being able to have these techniques, these tools, these practices in order to, do less, worry less, effort less. You can think when you really are doing all those things, you almost like block yourself in a sense. You almost get in your own way and you start getting tunnel vision and you can't quite see the bigger picture. So it's like we often get into that place when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling panicky, when we're feeling like, oh no, like I'm gonna lose, and and then the struggle becomes harder and then the trust isn't there and the softening isn't there. And then, we keep kind of feeling like we're banging our head against the wall until finally, this is a big term, but we finally let go, or we surrender we soften in to the experience that's unfolding before us.
Yeah, I feel like looking back on my life, uh, I spent a lot of it fighting life. And then finally, you realize maybe that's not the way. Yeah, acceptance is, especially this last year, has been very, very big. And yeah, I think trust. That's been very big too. I had a lot of obstacles this year where it seems like it's not possible to get the help you need or whatever, or to have those resolved, and then they are. And then so the next time you run into one, you remember that. And yeah, and then we go through a lot of things where I think to be in the moment, you have to say what's going on here, and you just have to say, I don't know, but it doesn't matter because it will work out. And so I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I like it. Thanks for your perspective.
yeah. So I noticed that you studied yoga in India. Now that sounds like quite an adventure. Was that something that you just decided you had to do and you found the resources, or did you have family support to do that? Or
No.
yeah,
The thing, I did not have family support. My family did not want me to go to India. They thought, my family, and I mean this in a loving way, is I feel they're not like super into traveling or getting out of the comfort zone. My father's a little different now. Now that he's like he's embracing life more and traveling more now. But would he go to India? Probably not. So when I was 19, I went to college for a year, and then I went out to, I knew since I was a child I wanted to live out west. So I just went to 1 year of college out of high school, and then I moved out west with someone I was dating at the time. And we got jobs in Yosemite National Park. And I was there for a year, a little over a year. And then we kind of parted ways. And I was just in this very like, what am I doing? Who am I? I don't want to go back east. So what should I do now? And um, well, honestly, before I even stopped working at Yosemite, 9 months prior to that, I bought a ticket to India just out of nowhere. I just like woke up. This is kind of like how I navigate sometimes, or did in the past at least. I woke up and I was like, I need to do something like different, like kind of drastic. I want to, I don't know, I guess I just had this deep urge to explore. No yoga intention in my mind. I had practiced yoga here and there, maybe when I was 16, just dabbling with it. And then so that time came 9 months later, but I no longer worked in Yosemite. I had like this month of just being in limbo till my flight was going to leave for India, but then I finally made it. So I went to India, and I did end up going with a friend at the time, and I was there for 2.5, 3 months, and it rocked my world. I would not say it was a vacation. I would not say it was a pleasurable experience. I think India is beautiful, and it just has, it's one of the wonders of the world. But for me at the time, I needed a wake up call. I didn't know what I was doing. And so at the time when I went to India, it was a part of my life where I had been suffering with depression that had been going on for years, suffering with an eating disorder for years, having a lot of anxiety, a lot of insomnia, just a lot of just running on fumes, just because I didn't know any better. I didn't know what was what. So when I went to India, of course, like what do you do when you're in India for 3 months? And so we went around to various places, touring certain areas, and did some yoga along the way. Eventually got very, very sick and my nervous system was already so upregulated that it was hard for me to honestly like just be a human over there. Like the sounds, the smells, the lights. I remember I was walking around with a blanket over my head with earplugs in because that's how upregulated or dysregulated my nervous system was at the time. And so I did find yoga and I started practicing yoga while I was there. And I ended up at one point practicing like 2 or 3 times a day. I'd wake up at 4 a.m., I'd go to the ashram, it'd be 2 hours of meditation. Then there'd be like a hatha class in the noon hour. And then I would go to like a really hardcore Ashtanga yoga Mysore series for 2 hours in the evening. And so it became just my daily routine. But in the midst of it, I did get very sick from drinking the water and what have you. And so that rocked my world because I already was depleted in so many ways. My, nourishment, like did not really have much weight to lose. And from being sick for a couple weeks, I had lost another like 10 pounds. So when I finally came back to the States, I was like under 100 pounds. I'm 5'8". I weigh about 130, 135. So it was a very like, sometimes I read, these texts about some folks who go through their transformation into like, who they're becoming. It can be very like dark and very intense. Sometimes it's a near-death experience for some because it kind of, they need to be shaken so much to be like, wake up. And sometimes that doesn't even work. So that sort of feels like what happened. And that was my introduction into yoga. And then it just stuck with me ever since. And it became this backbone to my journey, to my existence. And it really was my pillar for the next, now I'm 35. So yeah, for the next 15 years, 16 years. And it really, I would say, dropped me into those states of trust, surrender, and not all the time. Trust me, they're very difficult at times, helped me drop into like being able to find clarity and discernment, making the choice of like, what path do I want to go down? What path is going to serve my highest and also serve the greater whole? And so this is a long story, but in a nutshell,
Yeah,
that is
it's an important story because everybody's wanting transformation. So go ahead.
yeah. So yeah, this is interesting. It was just in the last few years, I'd say in the last 4 years or 3 years, really, I made this decision that I was going to like my career, my job, my dharma is teaching. We can call it teaching yoga, but teaching like mindfulness, teaching this deeper layer of existence that it's all we all inherently have it within us, but I think it gets forgotten or gets covered by a lot of stuff from our outer world. And so we just forget that it's there, but it is this to, you know, key to longevity, key to being free, key to happiness, key to better relationships, better life, greater levels of abundance. And we just sort of forget it's there sometimes. And so I feel like, my dharma is helping people access this place again. And I decided, a couple years ago, after some other crazy things that occurred, is that this is what I'm going to do. I'm no longer going to, do these jobs that I don't love, that really like bum me out every day. I have to go do them. And I felt like I had to do these jobs in order to do the thing that I love, which is teaching. And I was like, eventually I was like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, why am I putting my time into something that isn't filling me, fueling me? And instead now, like, transmuting that energy into this thing that I feel is my purpose, that is very purposeful work. And so when I made that decision, all of a sudden, there's that book that's like, when you I'm botching the quote, but something along the lines of, when you like make a choice, the universe conspires in your favor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I made this choice. Like, I just quit my other jobs, and I put this trust into, okay, this is the path I'm going down. And then it just sort of unraveled into its own like deliverable, that now how I work with people. And so I now use all this background of yoga. And for some people, yoga doesn't resonate with them. Don't even call it yoga. These techniques, these tools to utilize to become an umbrella term here, to become a master of your stress. And what that looks like, it doesn't mean no longer experiencing stress, because stress is just a part of reality of our life. Our nervous systems have been evolved to be able to navigate stress, but our external world has changed so rapidly with technology, with cars, with all this stuff, that our nervous systems haven't necessarily like been able to calibrate with that. And so mastering your stress is about, it's basically about training your nervous system, building a certain level of awareness so that when you come up against a stressor, something that really triggers you, causes anxiety, makes you feel like you're being hijacked, you might say, you're able to come up against it. And rather than it just like taking hold of you and just like, ripping you apart like a wild animal, you're able to just come up against it. You actually meet it. This is where your awareness is, these techniques, what they do for you. You're able to meet it and then like rest back from it, start to take the charge out from it. So you become more of a, like a captain of your ship, rather than just like drowning in the ocean. Okay. And so this is a game changer. So folks who experience chronic stress, ongoing, which oftentimes results in ongoing anxiety, is that they've potentially forgotten the tools that are inherent within us that allow us to not be taken out by that, to not have chronic pain, chronic stress, chronic anxiety. In fact, less is more. It's actually a lot simpler than you think to be able to navigate life in this way and to live from a more regulated state. And what regulated nervous system is like, equates to, is calm yet very focused, like a flow state. When you're doing something you absolutely love, you're on point and you feel good, you feel joyful, you feel inspired. Like, that's a regulated nervous system. And it's not that you're never supposed to experience fight or flight. You want the whole gamut of nervous system experience. You do. That's a healthy, adaptable, resilient nervous system. You just don't want to get stuck in survival mode, or stuck in freeze mode, where you're so anxious and locked up, the way your brain responds is frozen, doing nothing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so some people would define health as resilience. And so really nothing happens until you find this safe, balanced place of inner resource. And that's what yes, everything, we're completely capable of being knocked off base. You could be hit by a car. You're not going to ignore that. That's a tremendous trauma. And yet, can you, health would indicate that you can take that without it having a permanent deleterious effect on your way of living. And is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would love, I'd love to share this experience I had most recently, about a week or two ago. I was at a dinner gathering, and there was a woman there who works in the hospital. She's a PA, and very, very cool woman, great energy. She was talking about PTSD, those who suffer from PTSD, specifically those who came out of war, in the military, like seen a lot, loud sounds, lots of banging. I get it. PTSD is real and it's strong and it can completely rule somebody's life. And she went on to say that, those who have PTSD from the war, they'll always have that. Like, it's always there. And yes, it is in a sense, and also no. And what I mean by yes, in a sense, is every experience that we have, someone's referred to it as little t trauma or big T trauma, it is imprinted on our nervous system. It's like you might see it as like a scar. You might think of it as like a scar. It's always there, and our nervous system remembers that. It's like the historical timeline of our lives. But at the same time, all the recent data, scientific research, like, we know that neuroplasticity exists. We know that we can rewire our brains, that our brains are not fixed, that we are actually way more adaptable and resilient than we've ever thought that we were. And there's tons of research out there to prove that, for those who might be skeptical. So when it comes to something like PTSD, when you do work, we'll call it work, or you do self-awareness exercises around the traumas, you are actually able to take that very, very loud charge, or that volume that's just through the roof. It's all that you see, it's all that you feel, it's all that you experience. You're able to tone it down, turn the volume down, take the charge away, to where, sure, maybe it's there a little bit, maybe it comes up if you hear like a loud bang or something, but you're able now to have that awareness, to know in a moment when you're starting to feel the symptoms of upregulation, you're starting to feel the symptoms of stress, of anxiety, and you can meet that experience, you can meet those emotions, and be able to dance with them. I say, be able to find this fluid relationship with those stressors, so that you can work with them. You literally tap into your inherent freedom. Like, this is freedom, to work with them, to dance with them, to, create space with them, less, just no longer being like hijacked out of the blue, being reactionary to your life's experiences, being able to just to exist in life from the state of response, of, oh, I see that, I feel that, now I will respond. And by doing this work little by little, and it's really simple tools and techniques, you literally are rewiring your brain, you're changing the way your brain perceives that previous experience. So the brain is no longer living in the experience as if it's happening right here and now, which is what happens every time we're reliving trauma, where our brain thinks, oh, it's happening right now in real time, and my body is going to respond from a state of survival in every moment, because that's all I'm thinking about, that's all I'm feeling. Instead, we're reversing that, we're rewiring that. And instead, we're not just living in that place where we are regulating, we're recalibrating, we're opening up our perception of reality to experience more of life's offerings, not just this, this really intense place that almost might feel like it's robbing us of life.
Right.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. So Einstein said that time is just a stubbornly persistent illusion. And so what you've talked about there is you could look at an experience in the past that has frozen you into certain attitudes, and you hold that as a terrible, terrible thing. And then you could have a realization that that was a learning experience. And now, in a sense, you've even changed time. You changed your whole perception of that. And you can move forward. You don't want to forget it because it's a lesson. So who wants to forget the lessons you learned? But so it's a fantastic thing. We're fortunate now that in the West, science has realized that neuroplasticity is a thing, because even in the 90s, and I'm old enough to know this, and persisting in the textbooks beyond, there was no such thing as neuroplasticity. After you're 25, your brain is declining and all of that. But now we know that everything you're saying is true. And you can actually transform these experiences so they're not the terrible thing they used to be. Instead, they're a learning experience. Somebody's recently talking about some traumas with some people actually define their life. They become the main learning experience in their life. And so that's a good thing.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
for you, you're even describing a moment when you had all these things going on and you needed a wake up call. So, in that sense, that was one of the major life defining incidents for you so far. I know what it's like to drink bad water. When I was about the age you were describing, I drank some water out of a river where everybody's bathing and they probably had babies in it. And I was sick for weeks, probably 6 weeks or 2 months.
Yeah, yeah, it's brutal. I felt like it took me years, honestly, to recover from that, just in the sense of my gut health, because I didn't want to take a bunch of antibiotics, and I also didn't have a ton of money to pay for like a naturopathic doctor. So it took me longer, it took me a long time to figure it out on my own. But at the same time, that was part of my lesson. Like, now that I figured it out on my own and just did a ton of research, a lot of self experimentation, and then talking with actual naturopathic doctors and such, um, yeah, it was amazing to gain all that knowledge, which I never would have if I just went to, no offense against the Western doctors, they're great. They're great when they need to be there. But for me, with this particular issue with getting sick in India, I didn't want a quick fix. I didn't want to just shed every last good gut bug out of my gut and just, you know, um, figure out how to recover from that. Although, in a sense, I did have to figure out how to recover from that. I do have another story that it's actually very recent, in the last few years, that is a huge reason why I got into nervous system regulation. So I did say that there was this kind of organic unfolding process that led me here, which is very true. But there was another sort of wake up call that came to a head about 3.5 years ago, 3 years ago, I think, that really was eye-opening for me to then begin to educate myself about the nervous system and why it's so important to properly recover from stress. Now, when I say stress, it means so many things. It might mean, recovering from heavy activity, heavy exercise, recovering from burnout, from never resting, from always working, from always like having the nose to the grindstone. Stress can be just like we're talking about, like PTSD, having these experiences where we're always on because we have to be in a state of survival in order to survive. But we have these experiences like in war where we're always there because we have no other choice. We get locked in. So there's recovery, stress recovery from that. So would you like me to share this story?
If you have time to do it, I certainly would. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a pretty poignant story in my life, for sure, on my timeline. When I was Okay, so you know my history more or less in my 20s where I was very much like in starvation mode. Even when I came back from India, I was still in this place of needing of just like my mental health wasn't very good. My physical health wasn't very good. So now I'm like recovering from India, as well as still having issues with an eating disorder, revved up nervous system, anxiety. Same time, you can think like I had an eating disorder, so I was very much addicted to running 7 to 10 miles a day, like I just pushed it, deprived myself of everything you can imagine. Like that was my 20s, very strange experience. And what ended up happening is 29, 30 years old, I went to the doctors and I got my yearly checkup, as they do. And so they did the pap smear type thing, and it came back as HPV positive. So HPV it's called human papilloma virus. About there's a statistic about like 80 to 90% of people have this. It just, you can get it through physical contact. You can get it very easily. Men, I don't know if this has changed, but men don't actually have a test to see if they have it or not. And most women, most men, most people clear it on their own within like a matter of 6 to 12 months. Now, if it doesn't clear, it begins to exacerbate and it becomes this ongoing infection. So an ongoing infection is your body is not recovering properly. Your stress recovery is not happening because your immune system is now being taxed. Your body's using every ounce of fuel that it can to potentially get rid of this infection. But if the infection's not going away and it's chronic, there's not enough for your body to give to this. So it's just going to keep exacerbating. So this was essentially what was happening inside of my cervix. So they did a test, they did a biopsy, and it came back as high grade. They call it high grade CIN, which is precancerous cells in the cervix. And they scare the crap out of you because they're like,
Yeah.
this doctor calls me up at 5 at night. I'm already struggling with insomnia at this time. And she calls me up to tell me this, to tell me what she has found. And I just kind of lost it because she just scared the crap out of me on the phone. Everything she was saying, she was like, healthy people get sick too. You have a disease. Thing is, it's not a disease. It's not a disease. It's a virus that can create precancer. Precancer in the cervix takes a long time to actually turn into full cancer, but it's still huge. This is a very, this can be very scary. And a lot of women get scared through this approach of Western medicine, just saying like, okay, you have this thing. So now she's like, you need to come get this procedure done called a LEAP procedure. And what that is it's very barbaric sounding. They take this hot blade. They go into your cervix, like it acts like a whip, and it just really quick goes inside the cervix and it cuts the first layer of the cervix out. They remove that. Now you have this huge wound inside of your cervix that must heal. And the thought process behind this is okay, we removed the precancerous cells. They're not there now. They could come back because we're not addressing the root cause of this. We're just removing what we're seeing is considered sick. Okay, so we're going to remove that. This can lead to significant scarring in the cervix, sterilization. It can definitely come back because the root cause is not being addressed. The root cause of this is stress. One of the number one root causes. So I was scared. I was very upset. I was very stressed out after I got this information. And it took me about 24 hours to just kind of change my way of thinking and be like, no, like I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to take hold of my health. I'm going to research as much as I can, and I'm going to find a holistic approach that feels more resonant for me to navigate this, because I want to know the root cause. I want to not have to go through this again. And so that's exactly what I did. So I probably spent a whole day, I'm not kidding you, a whole day just researching, writing, like finding all this information, finding portals on the web of these women in these chat rooms talking about this scary thing that they have, then finding like holistic chat rooms and where there's tons of information. So then I just take these tidbits and just start doing my own research, um, um, legit research. And so what I ended up doing is I just did a whole 180 on my lifestyle. I already thought I was healthy, but no, I wasn't healthy. This was a wake-up call. I had barely been eating. I was eating like I'd have like this little salad for lunch, and then at nighttime I'd have like gluten-free mac and cheese with some mushrooms in it. It was like it wasn't much. And so I started taking a lot of supplements. I started doing really significant mindfulness meditations, yoga nidra, breath work, just totally resetting my nervous system, rewiring my brain, doing a lot of Joe Dispenza meditations, which I just feel are massively impactful because they just work with mindset, being able to shift out of that negative thinking and to really like just keep rewiring into this mindset of potentiality, hope, joy, inspiration, love, you know, um, less fear, more love, less scarcity, more abundance, that type of mindset shifting. And so 3 months go by, and
And were you eating more?
oh yes, my diet changed. My diet changed a lot. I was like juicing every morning, getting tons of vegetables, nutrients. Every night I was making like bone broth, soup, tons of turmeric, tons of garlic, tons of onion, vegetables, all organic, like super clean diet. And I was vegan for a long time in my 20s. Nothing against veganism, did not work for me. That was the sickest I've ever been in my life. So I did incorporate organic chicken, fatty chicken. I like fat. My body loves fat. My brain loves fat. I feel like I'm thriving off of that. So really good fats, good oils, never eating out, no sugar, really just, I'm like, whatever. Like they said they wanted me back in 6 months to retest. And I'm like, I'm going to give it all I've got for 6 months. Like, why not? What do I have to lose?
Yeah.
It's either this or really invasive surgery that I just didn't want to happen. So 3 months go by and I actually had to go back to the doctors because I had this weird like swollen lymph node on my groin, and I was like, oh no. So I was paranoid. So I went back in, and so she did another test. Just checking out, like, HPV still there, what's the status, and all that sort of thing. And so a week later she calls me up and she's like, the test is negative, like everything's clear. Like there's no more precancerous cells, there's no more inflammation in your womb. We want to see you back in 6 months. We'll do another test, which they did, also came back negative. And then after something like that happens, they want to test you each year for 3 years. So I just had my third test negative. And so that, I remember that day when she called me, I was just like so happy. Like I yelled, I screamed, I celebrated. I was just like, yeah, like it was life changing for me. And I learned so much in those 3 months. And I remember I made a YouTube video. It's on my YouTube, and I'm gonna have to make another one because it was like very like shoot from the hip, make this video. But I've had women find that video. It's like my one video I have on YouTube. And they reach out to me. I've had women from the UK reach out to me asking just for help, for advice. I've been in a lot of chats in the Inspire community, and there's a lot of like women's health on there with different subjects. And so people have found me on there, and it's just been super cool. Like, it was super cool going through that. Like at the time, like we talked about at the beginning, at the time, it was absolutely scary. And you can go into that victim mentality of, why me? Why is this happening to me? I'm so healthy. I'm so good. Why would this happen to me? And I'm so glad that it did, honestly, because I have so much more knowledge now to be able to share with clients, with other women, and not just women, men too, about so many things. And I often feel like you got to walk through the fire yourself to be able to really meet people. And I'm a huge believer in that because I just am. It just resonates for me. So yeah, that was a big turning point.
I'm very happy that you shared that story. I know you're a little short on time. I was going to ask you some more technical questions. They don't matter.
You can, if
With
you
it,
want. You
well,
can if you want.
I think that what you've shared is more important than what I was going to ask. And what I really like, and I'd like to maybe have you emphasize, is that that was a wonderful, freeing experience. But you mentioned the layers, and that you still could face fear in life. And to me, uh, all these things that we're learning about, that is life, and that is the process of life. And yes, we can right now come to a place of fullness inside ourselves, but the whole process of living is not done. And yeah, there's so if people are listening, it's not like you've got it made. It's like, hey, we've got some more adventures in front of us, some more layers. Every time I think, I lost a lot this year, but every time I think that I'm kind of, yeah, I kind of got it now. And there's another layer for sure. And so that's the adventure of being human. And so many different types of stresses too. Hopelessness, that's a terrible stress,
Mm.
um, very akin to depression. But wanting something and you can't quite find it and you don't think there's a way, that's terrible.
Oh, I know. I know. It's so fixed. And I use that word often because fix is the last place that I want to be. I believe there's so much potential in any given moment to to respond differently,
Yeah.
to change your perception, to let's say you're in a bad mood today and you got to go meet people, you got to teach a class, or you just got to show up. Like there's so much opportunity there to not get caught up in your own like suffering, your own mood, and be able to kind of raise somebody up. And in that exchange, you're also being raised. Both of your vibrations are equally being raised. And if you were to meet them in this place of like, meh, you know, they're going to meet you with that. And I want to thank you for reminding me. And I always make this point is like, I still have challenges all the time. All the time. I feel like I'm having transformations weekly, and that's okay. Like that's a good thing. There's no like end. There's no end to be met. At least not right now in this particular life form that I'm in. And so these tools that I've just integrated into my life along the way make it so that each day, each week, every time I'm up against a moment of friction, a moment where I'm just like, ooh, this is a tough moment, I'm able to, I use this word a lot, but I'm able to navigate it. I'm able to work with the moment and be very conscious and be aware in the moment, and always kind of it really does come down to less reaction, less like forcing, trying to control, trying to, you know, make everything be exactly where you think it's supposed to be. And really just, it's like this widening, it's like softening in, relaxing into this experience, like letting the shoulders drop, letting the eyes soften, and being able to respond from this centered, deep centered place, like your anchor point. One way to look at it.
Yeah. And I think you've already expressed the difficult place was when you didn't know these things. Now at least you have all these great tools. And for me, another way to express it for me is that most of the things we think about don't matter. So when I see myself thinking something, if I'm thinking, "Oh, did I make that appointment for Tuesday or Wednesday? Then I need to think about that. But if I find myself just thinking about stuff that doesn't matter, it's like it doesn't matter. I was waiting for somebody the other day and I waited about 30 minutes and it didn't doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I wait 5 minutes or an hour. It doesn't matter. So this doesn't matter is a freeing thing. It doesn't matter unless it really matters, like your relationships or your family or you know those things matter.
Yeah.
But so priorities and what really matters, that helps me with my it's dangerous to get involved in thinking about things that don't matter.
It is, it is. And sometimes when that comes up and that arises, I find sometimes you just need to dump it all out on paper. Or sometimes I'll get on a voice recorder and I'll just start like talking into that voice recorder, just getting it out of my head, you know?
Yeah.
And same with writing. You could set a timer for 5 minutes and just don't even think about what you're writing or the 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 proper grammar of your writing. Just write it out. Get it out of the mind.
Yeah,
That's just one
noticing
technique.
it even more then. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to share like one of my most ultimate the ultimate practice that I share with clients, with people, is the practice of yoga nidra. Some people call it body scanning. Andrew Huberman calls it NSDR, but it's just this practice is about 20 minutes long, and I have tons of recordings. I've filmed of myself, and you're laying down on the floor. You kind of create this really nice nest, comfortable nest for yourself. You might put a blanket on, put a fold over your eyes, just get really comfortable. You're going to lay in stillness for about 20 minutes, listening to this guided experience that's going to bring you out of the mind into the body. And ultimately, the more you practice it, and this might even happen right away for you, is you start to notice your brain waves slow down and you start to move into these states of out of beta, which is this frontal precortex thinking mind active, move out of beta into alpha theta. So alpha is more meditative mind, and then you go into theta brain waves, which is that place. It's my most favorite place. It's the liminal space right between sleep and awake. It's a glorious place. And sometimes you get like these insights, these visions in this place. You might come back and you might not remember a single thing that you just received in that theta state, but that's okay. Like you just did some very, very deep consciousness work, like bringing the unconscious conscious, doing some processing in the mind. And this practice is just massively helpful for cognitive function, for your entire physiology. You're restoring on a very deep level because you're going into parasympathetic rest and digest. And it's also an amazing practice, like if you are trying to cultivate greater levels of creativity, intuition, insight. I could go into this practice for a whole hour and talk to you about it, but it is a game changer. And right now I'm actually doing 30 days of yoga nidra with some of my clients. So today's actually only day 2. There's one book I would love to recommend that I actually just started a week ago and I'm almost done it, but amazing book all about yoga nidra called Radiant Rest by Tracy Stanley. And it's one of the best books, honestly. It's kind of a workbook, like it gives you tips, gives you uh self-inquiry questions, things of that nature. But it's so inspiring and just really gives you a great hold on what yoga nidra is about.
That's certainly a practice that we could use. I've noticed that when I've been forced to work a lot of overtime in my past, creativity goes out the window for until you can get off of that schedule or even lots of jobs you don't even have time to eat. So this type of practice could be very useful. So I'm going to ask you to share your website. One more thing. Besides teaching yoga, you also do some hands-on body work.
I actually don't do that any longer, at least for not right now. Well, I had this shoulder injury come up from doing too much massage therapy or too much body work. But for me, it was a sign. It was like massage it wasn't my heart anymore. And so this is why I'm now working with people with their stress and anxiety. So that was a turning point for me, listening to that.
So I want to tell you that I'm inspired and impressed by your commitment to what you're doing too. It's quite obvious. And if you could tell people your website, I think after listening to this, they will certainly know how you could help them.
Yeah. So I would say, find me in three places. Where I'm putting a lot of focus right now is actually on my Instagram, and interesting handle name, Beet Parade. Beet the vegetable, parade. Just imagine beets parading down the street at Beet Parade.
I
And
can see this. Yeah.
And then on my Instagram, you'll actually find in my bio a bunch of links to you'll find my website and everything. So you can find me there. Facebook, Deanna Kay, Kay. You can find me there. I actually have two accounts on Facebook, so you'll see those. The other one's not a fake account. And then my website is Deanna-K or -K, Kay.com. That's being updated all the time. So my most present stuff is on Instagram and Facebook, I would say.
Okay. And I'll put those links in the description here. So
Awesome.
I want to thank you again for your time. It's been delightful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and